Hi there, my name is Bob Judson and you're listening to Leading for Life Stories. I'm delighted you're here and I'm really glad to have you on my podcast, and I very, very much hope you enjoy it. Hi everybody, and welcome to this very first episode of Leading for Life Stories, my new podcast. It's a real privilege to be with you today, and I'm very, very grateful for your time, because I know it's precious and I know that you've got many other things you could do with it. So the fact you're spending time listening to me is something I'm extremely happy about. And as I say, I'm very, very grateful to you. I'll ask two things of you right at the off the bat. If you enjoy this, then please subscribe. You'll find the podcast basically on all the usual podcast channels. And I'll make sure as well that obviously I'm advertising when I've dropped new episodes. The plan is for it to be a weekly thing. So hopefully you'll get your weekly dose of whatever it is I'm offering that particular week. And that's going to be a combination of my own experience, my own thoughts on leadership and things I've garnered from over the years that I talk to lots of people about and when I do workshops. But it's also going to include lots of guests. I've got some great guests lined up already and a long list that I'm hoping to bring over the coming weeks and months ahead. And I really, really hope, and I'm pretty confident that is going to be useful to you. I think there'll be lots of tools, techniques, tips, procedures, things that you can do which will help your leadership style, whether you're a seasoned, experienced senior leader now, or whether actually you're very much on the early stages of that leadership journey, just starting to build and run teams of people and finding your way in this challenging game. So why am I doing this? Why would I want to do a podcast that's on leadership? It's a pretty crowded market. There's lots of other people who are talking about this kind of stuff. And I fully appreciate that you have choice about who you listen to this from. But I've got quite a lot of experience. I'm going to come back and talk about that in a minute. But the basic reason that I thought this was a useful thing to do and why I got into leadership training and leadership development generally is that having spent a long time in the military and then transitioned to the corporate world, I took a view, and I still have this view, that it's very challenging in the corporate world to do leadership well because there are so few avenues that you get to get trained well to do it. I had the luxury of being in the RAF for many years when actually we got great training up front. We then got lots of continuous training as we went through life and through career. And that was hugely useful. It was a constant building block approach to get you more skills, enhance what you already had. And of course, you had lots and lots of opportunities to actually lead and to watch other people leading and see what they did, see what you liked, see what you didn't like, take things from that and adapt to it. That's not the case in the corporate world a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's based in business process first. You get promoted on the basis of your delivery in the business, and that continually happens in some instances. So you can actually become quite senior in an organization with actually very, very little direct exposure to leadership techniques. And if you're naturally good at leading people and you find it easy, that's great. But if you're not, that's much harder. And so the aim of what I'm trying to achieve over these podcasts is basically to give you some more thoughts, to give you some extra ideas, to whet your appetite for what you could do differently. And as much as anything, I'm just looking to make sure that I'm sharing that knowledge because that's a valuable thing to do from my point of view. I think it's about time I gave some of that back, and I'm really looking forward to being able to do that. So I hope that's a little bit about why you should listen to me. But I think actually what you probably want to know a bit more about is my background and where I've come from and what I've actually done. I spent 34 and a half years in the Royal Air Force. I joined straight from school. I was an 18-year-old when I joined. I'd done my A-levels, didn't do particularly well. I'd spent much too much time in the Combined Cadet Force and the Air Cadets and not enough time studying for my A-levels, which was entirely my own fault. But it left me in a position that university wasn't going to be an easy option. It was meant probably I'd have had to reset my A-levels and start it again, and I didn't really want to do that. So I converted what had been a university cadetship that I had applied for and got, which would essentially have been sponsorship through university for 4 years, to actually just turn it into a direct entry place, go straight to the Royal Air Force College at Cranwell and start my career as a Royal Air Force officer. I didn't expect at that stage that was going to last that long. I didn't know how long it was going to last. I was hoping to be a pilot, and I went into flying training, and I'm going to talk more about all the various elements of this as the podcast develops. But I actually ended up staying for effectively a full career. I left after 34 and a half years when I was 53. And I went on my own terms at that point. I decided, right, as time was up, I'd had a fantastic time. I'd done a lot of amazing jobs, again, which I'll shed some more light on in a little while. But it was time to go. It was time to do something else, look for a new challenge, and actually also time to go and build a second career while I still had the opportunity to do that, and my health on my side, and the kind of fire in my belly, as it were, to get out and go and do something different. So that's why I stepped out. And I went to Deloitte, and I worked for Deloitte in the UK in the London office as a resilience and crisis management consultant for 3.5 years. And I absolutely loved it. I was a director in the organization, learned a huge amount of stuff I had no idea about before I left the service. And it was lovely to be in that position where I could really tap into the knowledge of other people that have been doing that for a long time, see the kind of youth and exuberance that was there in a firm like that, and the capability of some of the very young team members that we had, which was just extraordinary. But as I come back to originally with my point about why am I actually doing this, I think there is plenty of room for improvement in the leadership space. And I saw that not only in Deloitte itself, which has pretty good processes. I spend quite a lot of time facilitating these days at Deloitte University. And and that is a real privilege to do. I really enjoy helping to develop senior managers and directors who I predominantly talk to, and the amount of joy and interest they get, I think, from the programs they're put through is really palpable. It's very it's great to see, and it's good that the firm actually offers those kind of opportunities to the majority of people in those sort of positions, but not quite everybody. Interestingly, though, with all the clients I worked with when I was at Deloitte, many of whom very big corporates down to smaller, medium enterprise kind of companies, the picture is equally patchy. You see some great examples of leadership, some fantastic role model behavior in terms of the way people are actually led and taught to lead. But you equally see areas where people, and I've had the direct quote from people where they basically say, look, I've never done this. I've never been told how to do this. I've been promoted. I've got to a position now where I'm building and running a team, and frankly, I have no tool set for doing that. So that's a real challenge, and that's the logic behind what I'm actually trying to do here. So what do I think you're going to get from this podcast? What I think you're going to get is I think you're going to get some tools, you're going to get some tips, you're going to get some ideas, you're going to get an awful lot of personal experiences from me and from others when the guests start appearing. And they're going to be good and bad. I'm going to very, very much try and keep this really honest, very much to highlight things that have gone not so well as things that have gone really well, because I think there's just as much to be learned from failures, if you want to use the term, as there is from real successes. When I was doing a coaching qualification after I'd left the Air Force, one of the things that was said was there's no failure, there's only feedback. And I think that's actually really true. If you look at all these things that don't go perhaps as well as you'd like them to have done originally, then developing yourself as a result of what comes from that is incredibly important. So that's part of what you're going to get, and I hope that is all useful in and of itself. And I'm always going to be very amenable to feedback from you after these podcasts. So whether you're sending me direct messages on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or indeed emails. And then that will be absolutely fine. And not only about the content of the podcast, what you thought of it, what you learned from it, but also what you'd like to get from it in the future. So what I want to talk about a little bit now is my kind of personal journey. How did I get to this point? What have I done? I've touched on that. I went straight from school and into the Air Force, etc. But it was a bit more complicated than that. If you've looked at some of my LinkedIn posts over recent weeks, I've been trying to bring some of this into those to give you a bit of an idea about who I am and where I came from. And it was a challenging time. I mean, I was when I was a kid, I was 3 years old when my father died. My father was an ex-Air Force pilot. He was originally born in South Africa, but came over to the UK well before the Second World War. Actually trained as an actor, went to university, went to Cambridge here. So the academic gene definitely didn't come down to me. But he then became an actor, and apparently was a pretty good one. He worked with the likes of Laurence Olivier at the time, and that was obviously looking like a pretty good career chance for him, I think. But then war came. Second World War started. He joined as a pilot. He was a Blenheim pilot for the majority of the war. and did a lot of operational missions. He won a Distinguished Flying Cross for the Cologne Power Station raids, and an absolutely extraordinary story in itself that went on during the during the early part of the war. And he flew operationally for a while. Then he stepped away from that, as many pilots did, and was more in the training space. But he stayed in the Air Force post-war. He had a number of other jobs. Was in Korea actually after the Second World War was the sort of second and final major operational activity he had. And then he finished up his time in staff appointments, as most of us do. And he left in 1958, having just met my mother in the relatively latter part of his career. My mother was in the army, so she was a Women's Royal Army Corps officer. She actually marched on Her Majesty the late Queen's coronation parade. She was always fiercely proud of, and every time that was on television, she would point herself out and go, "Look at me, that was me." On a pouring wet day, it was amazing that it must have been absolutely awful for them to be out there that day. And I've got various other members of my family who are also very military. I've got two uncles who are in the army, a cousin who was in the army. So I was a slightly sort of black sheep by joining the Air Force. But I guess that military mentality and somewhat gene was embedded in me pretty early on. But it was tough growing up because my mum was a single mum in the 60s. That's not a good place to be. That was a really, really hard place to be. And I think she did find it very, very difficult. She was financially, obviously, it was challenging. She moved from where we were originally living up near High Wycombe to where actually I now live down in East Sussex. And she bought what was then a dog boarding kennel. She was already very, very keen on dog breeding and was already breeding as a pet dog breeder, but then became a professional dog breeder and was one of the big names in the Pyrenean mountain dog community with those, if you know them, big white and predominantly white dogs anyway that come from obviously from the Pyrenees. So I grew up as effectively child labor in my mother's kennels. So when I wasn't at school, I was working for her, doing stuff in the kennels, getting very used to to doing all of that through the holidays, earning my pocket money. And she also wanted to make sure I had the best possible chance in life, and I'll be forever and eternally grateful for that. She sadly passed away herself back in 2007, but what she did back in the I suppose the early 1970s really was work really, really hard to ensure that I was going to get the best education I could. She couldn't afford to send me to private school. The local school to where I am here wasn't the best, and that would have been a challenge. I think if I'd gone there, I think my path would have probably been very, very different. And so she saw that it was valuable to try and get me somewhere that was going to give me a better start and a better education. And so she got me into Christ Hospital at Horsham, very big charitable boarding school, which unbelievably she paid not a penny for the entire time I was there. For my 7 years of education, she didn't pay anything, which was just a truly extraordinary gift. And the school is remarkable. I've just finished being a governor there, actually, as part of my kind of almost payback, if you like, for everything I got. I did 8 years on the council and completely loved that. It was an extraordinary opportunity to get a real great start. Not just a great start educationally. I've already alluded to the fact I spent a lot of time in the Air Cadets, not enough time studying for my A-levels really. So I passed them, but I didn't get great grades. But it's never mattered. What really mattered, though, in the education I got at Christ Hospital was the life skills, the independence, the mentality and the kind of preparation for living out in the normal world, which it was outstanding, absolutely outstanding at preparing me for that. And it was just an extraordinary set of, I suppose, skills and talent that it gave me. And obviously the fact I was in the Air Cadets really helped because I was then going to go and join the Air Force, and that was great. And it made a big difference in terms of giving me some preparatory background to doing all of that. But it just, I had more confidence than I would have had if I'd stayed somewhere else, I think. And the fact that I could do all the things I did in terms of public speaking opportunities and doing the work with the CCF, where I ended up running the CCF as the senior cadet, that was just great. I mean, it was a huge opportunity to be as independent as I needed to be, and actually I looked forward to going back to school rather than coming home, not least because I was child labour back at home. But it was just a wonderful time. And I was always sat there on going into flying. And I toyed with commercial flying and looking at that, but there was really no avenue into that at that stage in the sort of late 70s and very early 80s when I left school in 1980. And so I thought, right, okay, the Air Force is it. And as I've already alluded to, now I went through the process of application, which was basically at Biggin Hill in those days. And having initially been rejected, actually, I went there as 16 to do what was then called a test in advance, where you could do the medical, do the aptitude test for pilot, and they'll give you an idea of whether you were going to be fine or not. And I got told, come back in a year because I didn't crack the aptitude test. So I did a whole load of work. Immensely grateful to a chap, sadly now deceased, called Bob Ray, who was one of my teachers at the time, who ran the CCF at Christ Hospital, because he really worked with me and helped me and mentored me to get me into a space where I was ready and capable of passing those aptitude tests and setting me up for the long term. And I guess that's one of my first points that I would make in the leadership sense is I don't think he ever thought of it as a real big thing that he was doing. But it was only latterly when I look back on it, I realized how big a deal that actually was and what he did for me. And and it was just huge. And I didn't think of it probably at the time either. But in terms of a start in life and setting you up for success, that mentoring thing is so important. So if you get the opportunity to do it, if you're able to be in a position where you're helping other people to be the best they can be, then please do grab that chance, because it absolutely is vital to everyone that is going to benefit from it downstream. So I say I can't ever thank him enough for doing that and getting me into a place that I was suddenly past the tests. In fact, I had the hardest thing at the time, getting a university cadetship, which would have, if I'd gone to university, sponsored me all the way through it, and then set me up into the flying training game straight after that. I didn't do that. I had as I left school in 1980, one of the things I was doing just after I finished was I had a flying scholarship in the Air Cadets. I went to Leicester Aero Club and I flew Cessna 152s to do what was then 30 hours on a flying scholarship. Sadly, it's rather less than that now if you get one. But in those days as well, it was only 35 hours to get a private pilot's license. So I managed to get together the money to pay for my extra 5 hours and did my private pilot's license. So I had a pilot's license when I was was just 18 by that stage. But before I had a driving license because I'd failed my driving test first time round, and actually then by the time I got my driving license, I already had my pilot's license safely stashed in my pocket, which was again probably a foretaste of things to come to some extent. And so that was the start of my quite complicated journey. So I guess the point is, for lots of people out there who think they haven't had the best start in life for whatever reason, or have got kids and think they're in a position where it's going to be really difficult to give them the best possible start in life, those early building blocks are massively, massively important. And I think it's what you make it. You've got to seize these opportunities. You've got to actually grab everything you can with both hands and be grateful for it. And every fork in the road that you take, and I wrote recently on LinkedIn about forks in the road, then don't look backwards and wish you'd gone down the other fork. Once you've committed down a route, you've got to commit. You've got to continue going down that route, and you've got to give it your absolute best, because hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it doesn't get you anywhere. If you too many recriminations about looking backwards is not that helpful. So try very hard to think about what path do you want to go down, but look at alternatives. Look at a world where if that one doesn't work, what's the next one? And every door that shuts, there's a window open somewhere else. And and you need to look at life like that. I think it's very easy to think you're terribly disadvantaged. I've heard way too many people over the years say, I had a terrible childhood. This is what happened, and that's why I am the way I am. Or people who are talking about other people and saying that actually the reason they're like that is because they had this really difficult parenting time and everything else. And I'm not making light of that at all. I think that's absolutely true a lot of the time. And some people have terribly difficult problems they have to face and get through. But I certainly didn't have an easy start to my life, my career and everything else. And yet actually the way it turned out was, by my own standards anyway, pretty good. So I think be positive about these things. Keep a positive mental attitude is a hugely important aspect of all of this. So anyway, what next? Where did it go after that? Well, I joined the Air Force. I went to my direct entry route instead of going to university. So I left school in the July, and I actually started at Cranwell on the 28th of December 1980, which is a pretty bizarre time to start a training course. I think all of us at the time thought, about 130 of us, I think something like that on the course. We pretty much all thought, well, at least we'll get a new year off and we'll have a nice time over New Year. And we were pretty sadly disappointed when the only bar we could drink in shut at 11 o'clock, and we had a what's called a bull night. So I literally clean everything, polish everything, get ready for a full up room inspection, but block inspection the next morning on New Year's Day at 7 o'clock in the morning. Amusingly, actually, when I look back on it now, I really feel sorry for the staff, because the staff at the time, obviously, that would have been their New Year's Eve and their New Year's Day as well. And yet they had to turn out at 7 o'clock in the morning and come and look at this bunch of new recruits and give us a hard time, and started instilling the discipline that obviously is such an important facet of service life. And it was brutal. I mean, there's no two ways about that. It was tough, and I think lots and lots of people found it pretty difficult to swallow what was being offered at that stage in terms of, do I really want to go ahead with this? Is this a life I want to continue with? And there were a few people at the time that, that actually said, no, they don't want to do that. I think we had about 3 people who pretty much straight after that said, no, this isn't for me. I've obviously joined the wrong organization. And I can remember at the time the kind of attitude was, oh, they didn't have what it takes, a lack of moral fiber. They wouldn't have been any good anyway. And when I look back on it with hindsight, slightly with horror as well, really, having gone a long way through the Air Force myself, to think, how naive was that? I mean, you didn't give them a chance to turn around and really see what they could deliver, to get a proper perspective of what it was like in the organization. Thank goodness, none of that would happen now. I mean, things are very, very different now, and you would not see that kind of behavior or approach in any way, shape, or form. So, no, I think we're significantly better off as a result. But I got there. I got into Cranwell. It was an amazing, eye-opening experience. I'd packed up my £400 brand new purchase. Very old, obviously, it was brand new, but brand new to me. VW Beetle, 1500cc Beetle, driven it up from Sussex to be away from home, up at Cranwell. And actually, interestingly, everything I said earlier about the independence element. I mean, being independent as a result of having been at boarding school and a pretty hard school at that stage, as Christ Hospital was. It was pretty tough. It was all boys. It was pretty boisterous. The behavior was challenging some of the time, for sure. And again, things that are very, very different now in terms of approach and the way education runs. But that was great preparation, because it meant that I was ready to leave home and jump straight into that and go into a world which was just completely different, which was the Air Force. And it was out of one institution into another one. But that was fun. It was perfectly fine to do that. I had no feeling that I was stepping into a difficult place or anything else. It was absolutely ideal. And then we were off and running on that journey after the fairly difficult first 3 days with the New Year thing. We went through an 18-week training course that was by any measure hardcore. But what it was all about, importantly, was leadership. And it was completely laying the foundations of making you into a Royal Air Force officer. And by the time we got to the end of it and you were about to be commissioned, you had a much, much greater ability to turn around and be a team member, work with people, often in situations where they were physically very, very tired, because they did that deliberately on some of the exercises we've been on. It was hard physical stuff. You were carrying a lot of weight. You were covering long distances, given difficult challenges. And so being a team member, as much as being a team leader, was really, really important. But they put you in those leadership roles as well. So you had the chance, all of us had the chance to turn around and be out the front when you're actually running it, and you're developing the skills that immensely important later in life in terms of being able to properly organize yourself, your own mindset, and have your headspace clear to effectively run a team and deliver what was required for that. And that foundation stone stuff, I think, was stuck with me forever. I mean, it was massively, massively valuable to be in a position where by the time we got to the end of that 18-week course, you knew it's a bit like passing your driving test, I suppose. A lot of people have said to me over the years that you pass your driving test and then after that you learn to drive. And that's certainly true with leadership as well. Clearly, you've got some skills. They give you the kit and the tool set to be able to turn around and start developing yourself really, really effectively as a leader. Are you a fully formed leader at that point? No, of course not. Do you ever stop learning? No, of course not. And that's still true today. I learn every time I go into leadership environments and things where actually there are people who are giving ideas and doing stuff that I think, wow, I really like that. Or indeed, in some instances, I really don't like that. But it did give me a great start and a great foundation, which I think is a fantastically important thing. And again, from the point of view of tips and things from this, I think if you're in organizations now, view this as a journey. View it as a leadership journey right from the very outset of where you start, or indeed if you're a senior leader now, looking at the people that are coming at the bottom as kind of raw material into your organization, if you like, straight out of university typically these days, then those early days, the early things you give them, the foundation stones that are laid, are things that really, really matter for later on. So, try and, where you can, build in some of that stuff that is actually going to give them some help, give them some constant mentoring and support that actually builds them to a place where in the years to come, they've really cracked the problem and they're well and truly capable of being the leaders you want them to be in the organization. I'm going to break there for now because I want to just basically set the scene a little bit with this first episode and just see how it lands with you, whether or not it's interesting, whether some of this stuff is really resonating. And I've got a lot more to talk about. There's a huge amount of things, both in terms of my journey through the Air Force and all the various things that came from that, but also some specific areas that I'm going to pick up on. And some of these podcasts will definitely have a theme, and I'll talk about that up front where I've got a theme that is there. Some of them will be just general conversations. What I will always try and be is honest and transparent and call it as I see it. And where things have happened to me that I think were unfortunate and I've learned from them, then I'll bring those out because I think other people learn from those as well. And if you can, anything I can say to you avoids you being in a position where actually you're having to either make the same mistakes or endure the same sort of things that have happened to me, then I'll be really pleased if I can help you avoid that. So we'll bring more of that to upcoming episodes of this. In the meantime, I really hope that this was useful as a good start and it gives you a flavor of what's likely to come. As I mentioned up front, if you did like it, please subscribe, like, follow, whatever your particular platform offers you the opportunity to do. If you get a chance to give me a review, that would be fantastic. Obviously, if it's a nice review, that's even more fantastic. And any feedback you can give me either via direct message on Twitter or LinkedIn, if you want any specific help, if you want to just tell me what you thought, I'd be really, really interested in that. And trust me, I will absolutely look at it because I'm like a sponge with this stuff. I really want to know what you think. I want to know what's valuable for you, and I want to give you the best stuff that I possibly can. But for now, that's probably more than enough for me. I really hope you've enjoyed this very first episode of Leading for Life Stories, and more to come in the weeks to follow. And I hope you continue to listen. And thank you very much for being here with me today. It's a real privilege that you stuck with me this far if you're still listening now. Thank you. Bye-bye.